This video has shocked me to my core. It turns out, according to the research, the data, all of the problems that we're experiencing politically, from the emergence of political violence, the discohesion in society, is the fault of women. Now, I'm actually only somewhat kidding, because there's a lot of Republican women and conservative women that do a great job. But what we are seeing is a macro level trend. And we have this amazing video that breaks down this macro level trend. And that is not to be a dick, but the truth is women have voting patterns and men have different voting patterns. And the problem is women prioritize very different things for, I think, kind of obvious evolutionary psychological reasons. When you look at the latest data, I've got it pulled up from Pew. You track how women are voting and what they prioritize, all of it starts to come into focus. Now, some of you, many of you, probably not the bulk of my audience, but agree with how women prioritize things. The problem is men prioritize things based on logic and justice, and women approach things based not on logic, but on feelings and emotion. And I do believe that it is important for the human experience to have a balance of both. In certain circumstances, we want to be emotional. In certain circumstances, we don't want to be. But the question ultimately comes down to this: the patriarchy, the ultimate question. I ask you now to comment below. The story is, you are walking outside when you come across a spider's web. In that spider's web is a butterfly trapped. Do you free it? Now, this question, it's an old question, and it's meant to make the point about what we value as human beings. And it is true and factual that the feminine would choose to free the butterfly and the masculine would choose not to. It's not absolute. Some women would leave the butterfly, some men would free the butterfly. The point is, the logic of the circumstance is that while butterflies play an important role in our ecosystem, spiders do as well, and spiders need to eat. Why would we value one over the other? Well, emotionally, we recognize the butterfly is beautiful and spiders are creepy. But logically, we understand that there is balance in all things. Sometimes the butterflies get eaten, sometimes they don't. And the spider has every right to hunt and survive, same as the butterfly. And that is the question we ask politically. And too much of what we experience in this world, my friends, in our political environment, is freeing the butterfly. It doesn't really make sense, but it tends to feel good. And so you can take a look at the latest shifts that we've seen in the culture war, notably that it appears now child transgender medical intervention, I'm trying to phrase it neutrally, is being ended because the logic didn't pan out. And you know what? The logic bore a false fairness. Initially, when these people emerged and said, these poor trans children need support, many people on the left, mainly females, said, we must be fair and think of what would make them happy. But they didn't think long term. And the pain that has resulted in this has caused a feminine shift. Now that there's more information available, the men who were planning long term, who kind of understood if you give kids surgery, it's going to cause problems. And there were, again, many women, but it tended to be a more male approach. What we're seeing now is not that women have largely recognized that they were wrong the whole time, but that new information has emerged, which has created a new emotional conundrum. That is, children who underwent these transgender surgeries and interventions are unhappy. So now the female voter is seeing more and more unhappy people asking to be freed from that spider's web. They don't think in the long term. I want to play this video for you, which is absolutely fascinating and quite eloquently put, that basically says femininity is what's causing all of these problems. I'm paraphrasing, but watch the video. Now, before we do, my friends, one thing you absolutely must do is join our Discord community at timcast.com. Go to timcast.com, click join us. $10 a month. There's tens of thousands of people. They are sharing stories, they are running shows, and community is our strength. You will meet people, you will share ideas, you will learn, you will be stronger, faster, better, and better prepared. And you're supporting the work that we do here and all of our efforts. Let's roll tape, my friends, and see what this lady has to say.
But if you want to put it in a single sentence, you could say that feminization equals wokeness. Everything you think of as wokeness is simply an epiphenomenon of demographic feminization. Think about all the things that wokeness means. Valuing empathy over rationality, safety over risk, conformity and cohesion over competition and hierarchy. All of these things are privileging the feminine over the masculine. So if you have ever wondered why wokeness appeared out of nowhere when it did, that is my hypothesis, that all of the institutions that began admitting women in the 1970s eventually got enough women that they were able to reorient them. For example, women are consistently less supportive of free speech than men in surveys asking which is more important, protecting free speech or preserving an inclusive society. Approximately 2/3 of men say free speech, and approximately 2/3 of women say inclusive society. In moral reasoning, the traditional way of phrasing the difference between men and women is to say that women have an ethics of caring and men have an ethics of justice. In making a moral judgment, men will ask, what are the rules and what are the facts? Women tend to be more interested in context and relationships. So let's apply that to wokeness. When James Damore wrote his famous, or I should say notorious memo for Google, arguing that female underrepresentation in the hard sciences might not be the result of bias and prejudice, no one even attempted to argue that he was wrong on the facts. The reason that he was fired was because the things he had written might make his female coworkers feel bad. Or consider the Kavanaugh hearings. The masculine position was to say that maybe something bad happened to you, but if you do not have evidence, then we can't allow you to ruin a man's life and career over it. The feminine position was to say, how can you talk about rules of evidence? Can't you see she's crying? Now, to be clear, many women were revolted by the way the Kavanaugh hearings played out. In fact, the very best book on the Kavanaugh hearings was written by two women, Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino. But a political system in which men predominate will tend to operate according to rules of facts and objectivity, and one in which women predominate will tend to operate by the rules of emotions and subjective facts, even if there are individual men and women who fall on the opposite side of those camps.
And they do, in fact, my friends. So this is Helen Andrews, her provocative thesis, Feminization Equals Wokeness. And I gotta be honest, it's not a secret. We all actually knew this. The commentary on repealing the 19th has been around for quite some time, largely for this reason. People, men and women alike, largely recognize that macro-level voting trends that there are macro-level voting trends among different demographics. And so therein lies the deep challenge. Should we ban all women from voting? Comment below, because I know a lot of people are going to say yes. I don't agree. I don't believe we should ban all women from voting just because there's a macro level trend. But I do believe it is fair to point out there are macro level trends. There's a funny meme where it's Nolan from the show Invincible, and he's talking to his wife, and he says, what does he says? On average, women are 5'6", and she goes, but I'm 5'4", and then he sips his coffee. The point being that the meme is meant to represent this trope where women don't understand averages. That the guy is not saying literally every single one all the time. He's saying that if you rounded all the numbers out. If we look at the macro level trends, you find that women tend to vote for things that are ultimately detrimental to society. That is a macro level trend. But of course, as Helen Andrews pointed out, Molly Hemingway wrote let me actually make sure I give credit where credit is due. And she's Molly Hemingway and
Severino.
Carrie Severino. Sorry, I don't remember your name. Have done great work. There are many prominent female personalities, but I do think this. I do believe that even at a largely individualistic metric, men and women prioritize deeply different things. And the reason why Carrie and Molly wrote that book upset about what had happened to Brett Kavanaugh is not because they think like men. In fact, they think like women. They just have access to more information. That is, I genuinely believe that men and women are fundamentally different even in their thought processes. That men emotionally, based on the hormones in their body, will contemplate something differently, even if it sounds the same. That is, it's almost like that trope from, The Giver or whatever, that what color I see as red, you may see as yellow, but we will never know. because we can only see the color as we see it. And then and how do you define the color, right? When you look to define colors, you ask what is red. It's the color of an apple or a fire truck. And then sometimes fire trucks are white or yellow or who knows. The point is, it's hard to define what a color is. You can only describe it in reference to something else. Here's what I'm trying to say. I believe that if you were actually able to step outside of reality, or even with modern technology in the future, analyze the brain patterns, you'd find that Molly Hemingway and Carrie Severino's assessment of the Kavanaugh hearing is much, much still feminine. That is, women tend to care about fairness and feelings. And I believe that Molly and Carrie are still motivated much by that, although it's to varying degrees. We say that gender is bimodal, not binary, and what that means is there are some feminine men and some masculine women. But again, and I don't mean this to be in any way disparaging to Molly, I'm saying women will still operate largely based on emotions, on care. And in this circumstance, conservative women understanding what was happening to Brett Kavanaugh felt bad for him. It was an injustice. It was pain. It was, seeing him break down, nearly crying as he was saying they're lying. There are women who empathized with him, and there are women who empathized with the other women who were lying. That's the point. Guys, I think, overwhelmingly looked at it like, and again, there are probably some outliers, but I believe it's overwhelmingly this case. Guys looked at it like, y'all are lying. Like, I don't even care about the feelings of Brett Kavanaugh. I gotta be honest. I'm not gonna sit here and be like, oh, Brett Kavanaugh's crying. I'm like, yeah, I'd be upset too, but they're lying. I was watching a movie the other day, and it was on Netflix, and it was about this, who was it? It was Ashley Olsen, is that her name? She played this woman. It's a true story where apparently she drove to a lady's house in like 1980 and then just brutally murdered her with an axe. And I didn't watch the full movie, so I don't know. But I'm watching the defense. It's apparently a true story. And he says, she murdered this woman with an axe. She hit her 41 times, but she was attacked first, and nothing has refuted the claim of self-defense. The moment the defense attorney said that, I got my feet up on the coffee table. I said, not guilty. Because I'm a guy, not guilty. And sure enough, that's what the verdict ultimately came out to be. The argument I would give you is this. And you can cry and get emotional all day and night. Okay, and some guys maybe, but I think most guys wouldn't. And men, again, this is a great opportunity for conversation. You tell me in the comments, because I bet you're going to agree with me. You get a call. A man has been killed. And you hop in your vehicle, let's say you're a detective, and you pull up to a big empty field. And there's a dead man on the ground. And there's another man. And he's got a gun. And he's put the gun down. And he's standing, he's got his hands up. And you walk up and you say, tell me what happened. And the man says, that guy threatened to kill me. And I defended myself. What's your response? Is he a murderer? Was it self-defense? Let's say it's an open field. No real evidence of anything other than a man on the ground with a bullet in his chest. He's got a gun on his hip. 2 men. My answer? Easy. Agreed. Not guilty. Thank you and have a nice day, sir. We will, identify the individual. We'll send notice to his family. There will be no criminal charges. Now, the issue is, in that movie, they said, this is what the prosecutor said, in these instances, of course, no one can refute her testimony because 2 people were there, but one was killed. And so whenever you have a murder, it's only ever going to be the word of the person who killed the other. And my response is, cry me a river. You cannot put someone in prison without evidence. End of story. Making an argument that maybe they're a murderer because the other person is dead, and I say, show me evidence. Prove it. Now, let's say in this circumstance you come across this guy, and he says, look, I don't know, he said he was going to kill me, and he had a gun. I shot him. I'd say, well, it's unfortunate. But I don't see any reason to bring criminal charges because we can't prove anything. And what if he did? What if he didn't? Let's say it turns out that the shooter actually tricked this guy into coming to hang out and then shot him in cold blood, and he is a deep murderer. You still need to prove it because our system protects the innocent. And you do not go to prison because someone aggressed upon you. Now, let's say later on, you find chat messages on a computer where the guy admits, I'm going to lure him out here and kill him and then claim self-defense. Well, now you got evidence of murder, now don't you? And then you're going to ask him about it, and he's in trouble. Let's say there's a witness who says, nah, it ain't true. That guy was trying to leave, had his hands up, and he was backing away, and he got shot. Now, you see? But see, I'm a man. I am not here to play games. If I can't prove it, we can't do it. Take a look at this, the Pew Research voting patterns. Voting patterns in the 2024 election. Hispanic voters were divided in 24, blah, blah, blah. I don't care about race. I want to see men versus women. And check this out. Men, 41 Clinton, 42 Trump in 2016. Check this out. 2020, men, 48 Biden, 50 for Trump. That's interesting, right? And of course, Biden ends up winning. 2024, men, 43 Harris, 55 Trump. Now, this is interesting. You take a look at men voting for Clinton and Harris, and Biden did way better among dudes. Because I think a lot of guys are like, I ain't voting for a woman. But you look at 2024. Women were +7, Harris. Men were -12. So basically -12 means leans Republican, minus means Republican, plus means Democrat. You take a look at white men, -20 for Trump. White women were -4 for Trump. And this is why I say, my friends, repealing the 19th isn't the issue. The issue is culture. The issue is, have you been raised a certain way, and are you willing to sacrifice? What is your contribution? So my argument here is this. Look at Asian men and women overwhelmingly went Democrat. That's guys. Oh, so if we were going to really play that game of repeal the 19th, are we also going to be like, yeah, and also black men who went 54 for Harris, and Asian men who went 16, and Hispanic men actually went for Trump. You're allowed to vote. No, we're not playing that game, right? The reality is, if you're going to vote, it needs to be based upon your contribution to society. And I also think it's fine to point out these macro level trends. But here's the issue. For a lot of people, it's just easier to exercise raw power. And so what you're likely going to see is racists and sexists, and they're going to say, why bother with trying to train a generation or to create this new system where you have to prove some kind of work towards society just to ban the people we don't like? That seems to be the easiest way to do it. I think that will ultimately lead to destabilization. If the white population largely decided that non-white couldn't vote because the white population overwhelmingly voted for Trump, you're going to end up with large swaths of people who are who have no representation, and that's how you get the American Revolution. They're going to say taxation without representation. Now, the problem is politically we do have that, and it does largely break down on racial lines. In the Northeast, I was going to say Pacific, but in the Northeast, you have Massachusetts as a great example where just about half the state is Republican, but there's not a single Republican member of Congress. This is no representation. Sooner or later, the bubble is going to burst. People are going to leave, get angry, who knows? Now, with the United States being a large union, it's easy to leave. So the conservatives who live in the Northeast are going to move, but this is going to entrench the Northeast and make it further and further left until you get civil war. So anyway, my friends, I guess the ultimate point of this is, while I have no problem pointing out that women have macro level trends, as do black people and Hispanic people, Asian people, the macro level trends that is not something that we can actually codify into law to assess these challenges we face as a nation. The fact that Asian guys are more likely to vote Democrat doesn't mean you ban Asians, and the Asian population is relatively small. And then if you want to ban women because women overwhelmingly vote Democrat, well, white women don't. So then what do you do? Right. The issue is we do have issues on racial breakdowns in how voting happens. It is the utmost of problems in this country that the black population of this country exclusively votes Democrat. Now, to be fair, you take a look at this, and blacks shifted away from the Democrats tremendously by, it looks like about a raw 7 points or more. I mean, if you look at the previous, they went Trump 8 points. This time they went 15. So it's a big shift, but it is a problem. It is. We can't have people based on race voting for parties because of their race. Now, I don't think the principal issue is just race, but whatever is happening, we can see that black voters in this country, referred to as the black community, have a wholly different political worldview than the rest of the country on average. That is going to create problems for this country. We're not going to ban black people from voting. That's stupid. What we need to do is figure out how we have a voting mechanism that says only those that are actively contributing. That would mean that our resources will not be ill spent. And I'll put it like this. If you have a household and there's 4 people who live in it, your roommates, and only one guy has a job, why would the other 3 get to vote on what that guy does with his money? That makes no sense. He says, hey, look, if I want to spend money to put a jacuzzi in the backyard, then I will. If I don't want to. Why should they get the vote that he's got to spend his money to do it? They're not generating. And that's the problem we have right now. I think we can largely solve the problem of politics outside of race, culture, age, and gender. We don't need to make it about someone's immutable characteristics, which I believe would be wholly unfair. And I say this to you guys, all these liberals whinge about racism. They don't know what racism is. You know what bothers me? I get pissed off at racism. I do. I have no problem pointing out macro level trends. I got no problem saying that majority of the murders in this country are committed by young black men. That's not racism. It's racist when there is a good man who believes in his family, who believes in good American values and morals, and he may be Native American, he may be Mexican, he may be Chinese, he may be black, and someone is going to put him down just because of the way he looks. And that's what we're really supposed to be mad about. I don't care if you're Middle Eastern, Iranian, black, Asian, Latino. In fact, I barely even care. I don't even care that much about your ideological background. It's what you do. So I say barely because some ideologies are murderous or whatever. But that's what really bothers me. It bothers me when I know somebody who's Filipino and born and bred in the US of A. And he loves the American flag, and he wipes a tear away saying, this country has given me everything I could ever hope for, my family, my friends, and I would die for this country. And I say, yes, brother, America. And then you've got people who are like, yeah, well, I don't like the way he looks. And it's leftists. It's also people, it's just racism in general. It can be on any political spectrum. So to come out and say that we're going to restrict based on that, I say, hell no. To say that you're going to take away women's right to vote, I say, hell no. I say what we need is a system where you got to be a contributor in some way. So maybe it's net taxpayer, which would mean only like 18% of the country actually gets to vote, but that makes sense to me. If the rest of the people are benefiting from the labor of a small group, then the small group gets to decide how they spend their money and how they decide if it's going to be spent on them or not. That's the reality. Now you tell me what you think the solution is, but I'll say it again. Looking at macro level trends and then singling out a group being like, it's easier just to say we can't let black people vote is dumb. It's very, very dumb. Think about the 15% of people that you agree with who voted for Trump. And I'm not even saying they're wrong for voting Democrat, to be honest. I'm just saying in general, think about the people that would be excluded simply because of the way they look or their family history. I ain't playing those games. I think that's stupid. Think about all of the great thinkers, pro-America, all of the incredible voices that you would eliminate simply because of the way they look. Now, I understand. I do believe that there are differences in genetics. I believe nature and nurture play both a role. And you can see it in various cultures. But still, I am not going to be ever advocating for wiping out a demographic from the political space, even recognizing these macro level trends. There are other ways to solve these problems that don't result in infringing upon the rights of someone based on their gender, race, or otherwise. Smash the like button, my friends. Share the show with everyone you've ever met in your life. Follow me on X and Instagram at Timcast. Stay tuned. More to come. And we'll see you all in the next segment.